Hello everyone, this is Ohio Dan. I wanted to make a video that should be fairly short really, about the greatest sort of hindrance or limiting factor for men in adopting a red pill or MGTOW type of philosophy or type of way of looking at life. And that's something I've thought about quite a bit over the past few years really, is what is the thing that really prevents a lot of men, given our general ability to use reason, right? Our general ability to look at facts and evidence. Not every man is that way, of course, but what is it that stops men from looking at a situation as the situation between men and women today and saying, you know what, we're told this, but the reality is something else, and maybe we should make a different type of decision? So, my opinion is that, just in an overall broad sense, the greatest limiting factor in the number of men who adopt a red pill or MGTOW type of philosophy or lifestyle is basically the requirement of evolving beyond our own biological tendencies and a mentality of acceptance at all costs from women in society. And those factors really tend to trump our ability to reason in a lot of cases. Or to put it another way, just a desire to avoid pain, right? The fact that we, as a society, men and women, are really not told the truth in general about the differences between us. We're not told the situation for men is actually the opposite of what feminist doctrine says, that we actually live in a society that is favorable for women in many cases, is very gynocentric, is very much about only women can have reproductive rights, only women can be victims of domestic violence, only women can be allowed to have gender-based expectations, and so forth. Men are always at fault, men are the ones that are held responsible, but then women are the ones that have most of the power, especially if you sign a marriage contract or if you have kids or you get into a situation where domestic violence becomes a concern because you live together. Women truly have the upper hand. The workplace is another example of that now, because of a post-Me Too environment where supposedly powerful men need to be taken down, even though average men really don't have power over women in the workplace to begin with. Now, because of that factor, even just dating or flirting with women at work is a really dangerous game and is highly inadvisable, really. And so the fact that men are lied to from such a young age about where things stand, and then all the social pressure and the propaganda is to continue to believe that, oh, you just need to find the right woman, or women and men are equal, and you just need to treat your partner with respect and treat her as if she's at the same level as you and she'll respect you in return. All that sort of stuff that we know is just not true because of hypergamy, because of women having the advantage with so many different things like I've just mentioned. It's just very difficult to break away from that programming when you're taught from the time that you're a little boy, basically, that you need to strive to either get pussy or find a woman that likes you. You need to prove yourself as worthy to a woman. You need to compete with other men to make that happen, to succeed with that process. It's very difficult to undo that sort of damage that young boys and young men have had done to them for so many years and decades, to get to a point where you can actually break free from that and go your own way, or at least have a red-pilled mentality when it comes to dating or just where things stand between men and women now. And so I think because of this requirement to evolve beyond just your biological desire for women, and along with that, what you're told about having to please a woman and make a woman happy at all costs, because of that requirement or prerequisite, most men will have a difficult time reaching a point where they can accept reality for what it is and move to the level of awareness required for a MGTOW or red pill type of application. It's just very difficult to get to that point, and you basically have to go through pain to get there. And even though we have the ability to act rationally and to use reason, part of the process of using reason is to avoid pain, right? Part of the process of making a good decision is to try to avoid negative outcomes for yourself. And if society is constantly telling you, you can't just walk away from women, or you're a loser if you decide that you're not going to date anymore, or you just need to find the right woman and get back out there. You can't blame all women. How dare you think that all women are to blame, or the vast majority of them, for the state of affairs between men and women today? When you're taught all these things that cause you pain, to actually look at the facts for what they are, you're much less likely to do that, even if you'd otherwise be capable of using reason. So the process involved in getting to a point where a man can make this realization is often traumatic and determined by circumstances instead of something that's readily and easily accepted by most men. Most men essentially have to go through certain difficult experiences, like a divorce or a false accusation, or having your children taken from you, even though you really didn't do anything wrong to deserve that, or learning that your children aren't even yours and still being, in some cases, expected to pay child support for kids that aren't even biologically your kids in some cases. Those kinds of either traumatic or just flat out crazy experiences is what a lot of men need to kind of wake up. It's simply easier to continue believing in the conventional model of male expectation, of what's expected of men, I should say, until confronted with the negative results of these types of experiences. And there are guys like myself, to a large degree, that we had negative experiences, we had pain, but we learned before we got to a point where we were married or where we were living with a woman that made an accusation against us to the police, or where our kids were taken from us and we had to fight to try to maintain some presence in their lives. There are guys like myself that have seen this happen to other men, or in my case, without getting into too many of the nitty-gritty details, it's just I figured out that there was a missing piece to the puzzle. When my relationship ended with my former girlfriend, I realized there was something that I just wasn't understanding about relationships, and in particular with her, it was how she could say that she loved me and mean it at the time and then go make the choices that she made. It didn't make sense, right? I knew there was something about that version of love that didn't make sense to me, and so I actually sought out the red pill, more or less. I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time, but I figured out, oh, wait a second, women really only love you in most cases for what you can do for her, and that's not the same thing that men usually mean when they say that they love a woman. I'm not going to spend much time going into that in any more detail, but I managed to kind of put two and two together, but a lot of men don't do that. A lot of men go through multiple divorces before they can put that information together. And I'm not saying I'm all that smart, right? Circumstances still dictated my ability to figure this sort of thing out. If I hadn't had that relationship, or I had certain other events in my life that had happened differently, I probably would have never figured out that men and women love differently, and then from there realize what is the MGTOW lifestyle, or the overall understanding of the differences between male and female nature, and realizing where things really truly stand for men and how women have the upper hand on these things. I wouldn't have figured that out if it weren't for certain painful circumstances, even though I didn't get everything taken from me, that still led me to putting this information together, right? Being in a position where I could figure this out. Without those negative experiences, I may have never figured out what would be called red pill knowledge or information. I would have never been introduced to that directly. So the greatest hindrance to reaching most men about this subject, about having a sort of red pill or MGTOW view of how relationships are and where things stand for you as a guy, is the challenge involved in rejecting a normie perspective, the pain that's involved in that, in favor of the more reflective and rational way of thinking required to basically choose a better option for yourself, to realize where things really are for you, and to make a different choice that can hopefully lead to a better outcome by either going your own way, so to speak, or at least knowing where things stand, knowing that the vast majority of women out there are going to be trouble for you if you try to have any sort of real substantive interaction with them, right? If you don't vet the women in your life, you're going to end up getting in trouble with women. because they have that sort of power over you today in this culture, and because more or less there's no advantage of putting yourself in that position. So you get to choose other options. You get to look at that situation for what it is and choose to opt out and focus on yourself instead. But that is a painful process to get through one way or the other. It's just a matter of how much pain is involved, basically, from what I've observed within the men's community, at least, from men's accounts of what happened to them individually to get to that point where they were ready to accept a red pill type of way of looking at things. And so I guess my conclusion, more or less, in talking about this is that it would be better if there were ways to reach men without having to go through this whole process, without having men get divorced and have half their stuff or more taken from them, without men having false accusations made against them because the woman that they were with just got angry, or whatever the case may be, right? A woman at work accusing you of something because she basically wants your job. These kinds of things are going to happen. And of course, it would be better if men could become aware of this alternative way of doing things, of just rejecting marriage, rejecting kids, unless you already happen to have kids at that point, but rejecting marriage and kids and cohabitation with a woman because it's just too dangerous and there really is very little upside. It would be better if men could get to that point just based on not having that sort of brainwashing and being able to overcome their biological desires to be with women and to make a woman happy and to build a life with a woman and all that kind of stuff that is really a very questionable value given how things are. It would be better if men could realize that there are better options available to them in many cases. And I get that a lot of men, no matter what, are still going to try to pair bond with a woman. I get that a lot of men are still not going to choose a MGTOW type of philosophy, but I think a lot more would if they really realized what the stakes were, if they realized what the cost-benefit analysis truly is without having to go through all that pain. But I don't know what the alternative is, right? That's the question that I'm kind of asking in this video. It's sort of an open-ended conclusion. It's not really a resolution at all, but what is the way that we could reach more men and help them understand where things actually are so that they can make good decisions for themselves instead of just thinking that the first woman that they fall in love with is the one, or instead of putting themselves in negative situations at work or even with your home life by living with a woman or by dating a woman that you work with. More information is out there now than it has basically ever been, and that's the good news. But it still seems to me like most men that are finding red pill content or content that's positive in terms of what it talks about, content that's of good quality in terms of how it tries to help men understand their situation better, it still seems to me like most of them are either going through the ringer hardcore, they're really getting screwed over before they find the men's community, or they're still dealing with a lot of negative experiences. They're still having to wake up to the reality that they've been lied to their whole lives about male and female nature and where things stand for men. And it would be better if we could reach men without men having to go through this whole process, and we could reach more men that way, right? Because right now it's definitely circumstantial, in my view at least. It's definitely about if you don't go through certain negative experiences that are less costly early on, you're more likely to end up going through a divorce and losing half your stuff and losing access to your kids. And by then, you might still be able to find the men's community and go your own way, but by then, you've lost a lot more. And so it would be better if we could reach men earlier just based on our ability to reason, our ability to look at the environment for what it is. But again, the problem, I think, is that that gets obfuscated so severely by men's biological desires to be with women, plus society telling men that they have to be with women from the time that we're little boys, right? It's very difficult to reach younger men or to reach men that haven't been through these certain negative experiences, even though it would be better, certainly, if we could do that. So that's where I'm going to leave this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think. What is the biggest factor? Is there something else that's even more of a problem in terms of men recognizing the value of a red pill or MGTOW type of philosophy and lifestyle? Is there something else that's keeping men from figuring this out? Or is it mostly just the biological hardwiring plus the propaganda and the fact that you have to go through some pain, a good deal of pain a lot of the time, to break free from that, to master your biology enough to basically not be thinking with your dick all the time, but then also understanding the whole concept of you need to invest in one woman and build a life with her because if you find the right woman, she'll be loyal to you forever. That sort of nonsense, that has to be more or less overcome as well. And so I see that combination as being something that keeps most men from really considering a red pill or MGTOW perspective. And I think we would be better off if we didn't have that clouding men's judgment, but I don't really see a good way around that without the pain that's involved in some of these negative experiences. It's just a matter of how much pain each of us goes through to sort of accept the red pill, so to speak. But let me know what you guys think. Is there a way to make this situation better so that more men can hear the truth, more or less, about where things stand between men and women? I know we can discuss what specifically is true, and we may have slight differences of opinion, but the validity of the red pill, the validity of walking away from a system that hates you, it would be better if men could figure out the value in that before they go through these negative experiences, and it would be better if we could reach more men before that happens.